What you see here may look like a loss, but I promise you that's not quite the case. Allow me to introduce you to the hospital trap and let me explain why this is exactly what you want to happen. The purpose of a hospital trap is to make sure that the only units I lose are put into my repair facility. That way I can quickly repair them with gems. For example, I can do a full march and repair it with a little over 100 gems and I'm back in the fight at 100%, where the guy who just attacked me had his units degraded, in which case he will either have to merge his units or train more units, which is much more expensive and time-consuming than repairing units in your repair facility. Now, a hospital trap can be used at any time in the game, however, its primary purpose is during Eternal Lands. Eternal Lands is a marathon, and what you want to do is lose as few resources as possible while making your opponent bleed resources. So in other words, a hospital trap is you buying your enemy's units with gems. They lose units in exchange for your gems. Starting off with the most basic aspect of a hospital trap. A hospital trap is defending an objective or a tile with a march size that is equal to or less than what your repair facility can handle. So for example, I am able to hold 90 units in my repair facility, so my march size will need to be 90 units or less. You want it as close to your repair facility's capacity as possible, that way you have as much combat as possible, but as close to it without exceeding it as possible. So for example, if I sent a march size out that had 100 units in it and I was defeated, that means 90 units go to my repair facility and 10 units are going to get degraded. It is much more expensive or time consuming to replace units than it is to repair units. So the benefit of your opponent having units degraded where your stuff go to the repair facility is they're going to run out of resources before you. Hopefully. Now, while you can do a hospital trap on that information alone, to do a true hospital trap, you're going to want an attack speed advantage, because otherwise all you're doing is defending with a very weak march that you'll be able to repair quickly. Now, of course, late game, pretty much everybody's going to be running a level 10 high rate of fire, so there's two other ways currently that you're able to get the attack speed advantage. The first way is if one of your alliance members who is a legendary craftsman is able to make a Tower of Weakening. If a battle happens within the bounds of that tower, it will reduce the attack speed of your opponent, allowing all of your stacks of units to attack first. The other way is to combine the hospital trap with the Kate Curry trap. Kate Curry is able to give an increased attack speed when defending a resource tile, but of course using Kate Curry there's two downsides. One, she doesn't have the stats of an orange hero, so you're losing out on stats because you have to use Kate Curry. And two, she only works on a resource tile, so if you're defending objectives, she's not going to give you that attack speed boost. So if you need to defend power stations, ruins, buildings, etc., you're going to need a legendary craftsman to make a Tower of Weakening. Now, of course, with a hospital trap, your hero skills are going to be critically important. If you're doing a proper hospital trap that has an attack speed advantage, here is how I would recommend doing your skills. Now, of course, you probably don't want a march size increase because, again, you don't want to exceed your hospital's capacity. Now, if your march size is real low and your hospital's capacity is high, then you can fill them in as needed. But in general, you don't want a march size. Now, if your hero has an exclusive skill that does increase their damage, you're going to want to have that equipped. If it doesn't, then you're going to have to substitute it with another skill. So for example, if you're using Kate Curry, she doesn't have an equipable exclusive skill. Amalia's exclusive skill doesn't increase damage. So if you have heroes like that, you're going to have to replace the skill for something. But if their exclusive skill does increase damage, you're going to need that. The other skills you're going to want to equip is you're going to want a rare and common damage increase, and then you're going to want a rare attack increase. If you do not have an exclusive skill to equip, or maybe you're a Grand Marshal that's unlocked 5th skill, some of the things you can fill in there: crit chance, crit damage, common variations of skills that you've already equipped, just anything to increase damage. That's all that matters. If you have the attack speed advantage, you are dealing as much damage as possible with your first 9 attacks because you need to operate under the assumption that as soon as your enemy attacks, you're going to lose. Now, if your hospital trap is not going to have the attack speed advantage, so you're just going to be trading one hit for one hit with your opponent, then of course you're going to have to equip some survivability, and the biggest recommendation would of course be a damage decrease. So if you are not going to have the attack speed advantage, consider using a defensive hero, someone like Bradley, you, Dante, anybody who's going to give you some shield or HP, something for that survivability, because you're using a small march size, so your opponent is going to take out your march relatively easy. So some survivability things are going to be greatly needed. But of course, you're still going to have to punch back, so you'll have to do a combination of, say, damage decrease, damage increase, then maybe an attack increase. You can throw dodge in there. This one you're going to have to experiment with. It's very hard to do a proper hospital trap if you don't have the attack speed advantage, because you're going to be taking very few units, because since either your stacks of units are going to be very small, or you're not going to have 9 stacks of units depending on your march size, it can be very difficult to take out your enemies before they can take you out. I also wanted to list off a few heroes from each branch that are going to work very well in the hospital trap. So starting off with the army, I would consider Katyusha, Precious, and Amalia. They're going to deal out a ton of damage. If you don't have the attack speed advantage, consider replacing Amalia with someone like Bradley or Optimus Prime, who's going to give you that defense. If you are using Navy, I would recommend Belos, Akatora, and Yu. Even if you don't have the attack speed advantage, I would recommend them. They're just the strongest Navy heroes at the moment, and they do work well with the hospital trap. For the Air Force, I would recommend Rockfield, Aya, and Selena. One thing of note is Rockfield does get reduced damage if your opponent has a higher march size than you, so that is something to consider, but he's still going to be able to take a little bit off of each of your opponent's stacks, so he's still a reasonable pick. And then the only other thing I'll mention outside of the heroes is, if you have the resources to back it up, because of course it will cost Odinium to repair these kinds of units, the Gilair that's able to attack every enemy stack in a hospital trap with an attack speed advantage with some of these heroes is just absurd. But again, that's going to be very expensive, because even for repairing, it's going to cost you Odinium. A hospital trap is a very simple idea, but there's a lot of people out there that don't use it or don't understand it. It really is as simple as creating a small march with as much damage as possible and hopefully an attack speed advantage. And some of your reports may surprise you on how well you do. This was probably my favorite one from the Eternal Lands that these reports were from. Just make sure you're not spending too many gems on repairs. Know your limit. Free-to-play players, I know spending gems on something like this is real tough because you don't get as many gems as some of the pay-to-play players, so consider just doing a hospital trap and then slowly repairing it just naturally. I didn't bring up Wade very much in this video because he's not able to repair all that many units. I mean, if you're doing a hospital trap with a decent-sized hospital, he's not even going to be able to repair a full march one time. So, of course, he's nice to level up, but overall, this strategy is going to cost you gems. Or you're just going to have to wait for your stuff to repair naturally, which can be faster than training new units. Also, you're going to want to know your opponent. Since you are on the defense, you get to choose whether or not you fight someone. Get to know the people you're fighting against. If your hospital traps are looking like this when someone attacks you, consider backing out of that tile, because it is not worth paying 100, 150 gems to repair all the units in your repair facility just to degrade 6 of theirs. Even with an attack speed advantage, there are players out there that are just going to be so strong that it doesn't even matter. So when using your hospital traps, make sure you know your opponents, know who you can avoid. Again, the purpose of this is to make sure your opponents bleed more resources than you, so pick your fights wisely. I also highly recommend, if you are about to go into Eternal Lands or you're currently in Eternal Lands, this is definitely a video that you're going to want to post in your Discord. You want everyone in your server to understand how a hospital trap works, so they know how to use it and know when it's being used against them. But this is still a good aspect of the game to understand because it can be used in other portions of the game. It's just mostly used in Eternal Lands. And if you'd like to visit my Discord, that link is in the description below. I like to keep a lot of helpful information in there, up-to-date gift codes, spreadsheets, etc. But thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you to everybody who's subscribed. Don't forget to drop a like. And, as always, have a fantastic day.